So again, very good morning. Thanks for joining this RF02 One Device Endless Possibility webinar. My name is JM and from APAC. And of course, we have the rest of our team, Dayu, Aaron, Kathy, which is monitoring the chat box. So should you have any question, whether about pricing, technical issues, please feel free to drop it at the chat section in the Teams. Okay, so without further ado, I shall begin today's webinar. So today's webinar, we break down into three important sections here. First, we talk about overview briefly, what is the RF02, and then we'll delve into some of the cards that is available. And of course, the last part, which is the user case study and the workflow that I'm about to share. So of course, this device, just wanted to let you know, it's been around 1 year. We have basically did the announcement about a year ago, and we have launched this device. And there are some delay, basically due to the manufacturing and the QC process. And at the moment, we are shipping the RF02. And of course, it will be a good opportunity, for those partners who have joined us. And of course, for those distributors as well, business partners who just joined us, you can take this as a refresher course. And those who are just joining new, you can actually learn a few things, all right? The most important part, personally, I think, will be the workflow section. And please do not miss it, all right? And the whole presentation, I'll try to keep it as short as possible. We're looking around 1 hour or even 45 minutes, all right? Without further ado, let's begin. So RF02. So this device is been around in the market, okay? It's about 1 year. Already we announced, and we are currently shipping the RF02 and some of the cards. So let's do a quick refresh over here. Why this device is so powerful? Now, first thing off is this particular unit, it's a 2RU form factor unit, 2RU hardware, 2RU chassis, which allows you to fit in 18 cards. So 18 cards of encoder, decoder cards. So imagine 2RU form factor, you can squeeze in 18 of encoder cards or decoder cards, right? Super, super compact. Best of all, it has a web GUI. So nowadays, everyone talks about remote configuration, through configuration through iPad, through mobile phone. All you need is an IP address of the chassis. You're able to do all the configuration in front of your computer. And this device is basically built to run 24/7, right? So it has a dual power supply, as you can see here at the corner of the photo. So which means 24/7 operation is certainly possible. And ultimately, this is basically not a lot of, even until today, not a lot of customers or our partners are aware of it. So this RF02 in the whole chassis, right, it has an inbuilt layer 3 switch hardware being embedded into the hardware. So when you invest in the RF02, right, you will straight away get a layer 3 switch in the hardware itself. Okay, I'll talk about that later on the next slide. Now, ultimately, this device is able to handle 120 gigabits per second. This means it's a really powerful switch. It can actually switch the data throughput up to 120 gigabits per second. And of course, it supports expansion like SFP8+, and of course, it has a copper 10 gig rating, right? In case you have any existing workflow that are still using copper, it's still widely available, and you can also connect that to the copper part, which is available in the RF02. And of course, most importantly, it has VLAN, and we understand the complexity of the network. If you have any projects that requires segmentation, we have VLAN supported in the RF02 as well. So thirdly, very important is, like I mentioned, is robust. It supports dual power redundancy, 500 volts. It has an advanced cooling system. So if you can see right in front here, this small little vent at the front chassis, these are the air vents, which allow air to be sucked into the front and then leave the back efficiently. So which is great, right? So again, these are being designed to mount into server rack for the optimum cooling for the hardware, okay? And front display indicator, this is super important, especially when you install a chassis, right? You do not have, maybe at that time, you do not have any computers or any connectivity to the web GUI. You want to have an overview of what's happening with the hardware itself, the IP address, the card performance, the IP, the data input and throughput. The front display will be able to tell you what's happening each card individually. And this also allows you to look into the settings of the RF02. So let me just mute the phone here. All right. And of course, does the unit ship? So I won't be able to monitor the chat log. Maybe our team will be able to help. Aaron is on it. Thank you so much. So software stack suspension. So this is the fourth point, which I highly recommended is, so all of us know that we are converging in an IP world, and we have a lot of hardware cards are being deployed in the market, right? Hardware meaning to say a lot of brands out there, a lot of standards out there requires hardware to encode and decode. And when you talk about encode and decode, this specific hardware needs to be certain model per se, right? As opposed to the RF02, because as you know, Kiloview, we have really invested in NDI. We invested a lot of our resources into NDI, producing hardware and NDI, and R&D for NDI as well at the same time. We focus not only creating an RF02, which is also work with hardware, encoder, decoder cards, transcoder cards. We also look into software side of things. So this particular RF02 is a software stack expansion chassis. So what do I mean by that is, imagine this chassis allows you to install your own software, which dwell into software layer of processing. So for example, digital audio workstation, software switching, media asset management, playback, playlist, playout devices, which can be in a software form, can be deployed in a single, in a 2 RU form factor. Okay. Now, this RF02 itself, within the chassis itself, it's super powerful. Okay. When you invest in this gear, this hardware itself has a 128 DDR4 RAM. It has an internal built 128 gigabit MMC storage, and it's basically running on Linux operation. So operating system running standalone, okay, within the hardware itself. That's why it's really reliable, stable. We created our own software and using Linux OS to power up the whole RF02. And most importantly, earlier I mentioned it has a network switch module being embedded. So as you can see it at that side, you can see a close-up. There's a 10 gig copper port. Yes, this is 10 gig. Not to worry, right? You don't have a 10 gig network ready. It is also backward compatible. So if you have an existing router or any network switch that is using 1 gig, if you like to do a configuration, setting up the device, you can plug into the same copper port. It will work. And best is to run on DHCP. Okay, so if you have a router running a DHCP, plug that in, that will be able to discover the IP address of the hardware. Now, of course, you'll be asking, hey, what happens if I want to static the IP address? You can do that as well. Everything you can find, checking out the IP address, setting it static, can be done at the front panel here. So not to worry on that. And again, I highlight this. This has 3 additional SFP plus port, so you can basically expand your network as well. Okay. Again, we call this layer 3 management switch because it can handle layer 3 switching capability. Just that at the moment, because we built the RF02 to run a number of cards plus some software integration as well, right? Maybe we will not be able to open all the cool stuff from the layer 3 switch. We will only allow things that, as an integrator, okay, as an AV, that would commonly use, right? Because again, we are from the AV side, we are from the broadcast side. Some of the technicalities, like going deep down into network configuration, it's not my forte, right? I'm not being trained to configure LACP in depth, all right, or doing IP least filtering and whatnot, right, or doing IP assignment and all that. But of course, those features that it's really convenient for the AV partners will be enabled at the RF02 interface. Okay, all right. So of course, let's move on. Recently, we have released the firmware, which is 1.02. Now, this is a major firmware update for our RF02 simply because it has improved the stability overall. Because I personally have the hardware next to me myself. I've been playing around since the beginning of the year. This version basically gives me the most stable and reliable. And moreover, it supports 8 bonded devices. Now, you'll be asking, what do you mean by 8 bonded devices, right? So if you're aware, we do have the P3 and the P3 Mini bonding encoders, which allows you to put in SIM cards. And this device can be a turnkey hardware, which allows you to connect the P3 and the P3 Mini into the RF02 directly. And at the moment, I've been informed that we can actually work at least up to 8 devices, right? Of course, you can connect 1 or 2 or 3. What we're looking at around 8 devices for the RF02. And we are still doing some tests internally, and we'll see what we can basically increase the number of bonded. But 8, it's the recommended bonded channel that is being recommended by our product manager. All right. Now, this firmware allows that. Okay, I'll explain it further on the next slide. How does it work? And of course, the new and improved bonding workflow, which I will also explain on the next slide as well. So the FMG card and the RF02, right? Previously, when we designed this, there are certain cards that are prerequisite to do bonding. But right now we have, sort of upgraded, make it more stable, and we divide the responsibility. So I'll talk about it on the next slide. And of course, we enable the advanced configuration for layer 3 switch. Now, when I talk about advanced configuration, you can achieve really cool stuff from the workflow I'm about to talk about at the end of the slide, but it requires the professional service from Kiloview. So not to worry, we won't have any charges for the professional service. We'll guide you, or we will get our team to configure it for you, right? If you have any requirement, just to let you know that the layer 3 switch features, it's enabled, or it's can be configured in the RF02, all right? Just that, hey, you need to speak to us. We can get our experts to log in remotely, configure it for you, or teach you how to do it, okay? So these are some of the major updates. Now, bonding, decoding, new workflow. So prior to the first few version of the RF02, right, we have to get a frame, which is RF02, and a bare minimum of FMG 400, right? This is a bare card that you have to sort of like create a combo in order to do bonding, okay? So this is like a requirement. Now, of course, we have upgraded the hardware. We have changed the bonding workflow. So the RF02, by default, without any of these cards, without the FN50 or the FMG 400, you can support up to 8 channel bonding, okay? So you can receive the incoming signal, right? Now, of course, once you receive the bonded signal, you need to decode it, right? So in this case, if you're decoding it to SDI, you can invest a FN50 card, right? If you're decoding it into an HDMI, and then you can get a FM60 card. That's it, right? So if you need only one video signal out from your bonded device, then you only need one card, FN50. Or if you need HDMI, you get the FM16. Now, in the event, let's say that, hey, I have a P3 signal coming in. I want to decode it into SDI. At the same time, I want to take the same feed and I want to decode it to SRT or NDI-HX. So in this case, you would need a FMG 400 card. I hope that makes sense. So because previously, for the first announcement, the product is being designed that you need to fuse it with an FMG, a bare minimum, the FMG card to do the bonding and the processing. But right now, the RF02 itself, if you need only one channel per channel for the P3 out, you only need the FM50 cards. But of course, anything that involved IP, transcoding, or you need more IP feeds to be generated, we would recommend an FMG card. So I hope that makes sense. But of course, the FMG card is a very powerful card. It's actually a good card to have, bundle it with the RF02, right? It's like a Swiss Army card that if you need the IP conversion to happen, is always good to bundle it. Okay, so moving on, these are the existing cards that we are shipping. So thanks to, I believe some of those partners already joined the call. They are using, or they will be deploying the RF02. I believe they've seen these cards already, FN50, FN60. So I'm just going to go through quickly. The FN50, 60s, these are the 4K 10-bit HDR NDI encoders and decoders card. You can do encode or decode one at the same time. And those who doesn't know, it's basically a more powerful version of our N50 and N60. N50, N60s, they are a physical hardware that typically mount on top of cameras. And of course, some of them they're using as an encoders. But right now, if you need a high density chassis card version, yeah, this will be the FN50 and FN60, okay? So in terms of, I would say in terms of feature-wise, they are pretty similar. The things that you can't get from the FN50, 60 is the tele light, because you are mounted this device on the chassis, as opposed the N50 and the N60, they do have tele lights at the front of the encoders, but right now the 50 and the 60 doesn't have that tele light functionality. Okay, now of course, moving on, the FMG 400 cards, and I would like to use the MG 300. This is also one of our famous product as well for IP to IP conversion. So look at FMG, it's like a beef up version of the MG 300. Okay, and the FMG 400 philosophy is basically based on the MG 300. So what you'll be receiving this card will be IP to IP conversion, right? What you can see here, NDI, SRT, RTMP conversion, and of course, you can transcode 4 channel of HD, 1 channel of 4K, and to 264 and 265. Now, I believe some of you already heard about MG300, and you are waiting for a firmware upgrade. I've been informed that our R&D team is working with a firmware, and hopefully there will be a release date soon, okay? Because why? We are really putting 100% effort into the FMG 400, and we want to make sure this is rock solid when we ship. So all these gears are shipping right now. Okay, so I believe our team is answering those questions already. So I'm just going to continue here. Not to worry, if you miss any of the part, I believe the HQ side is recording it and we'll be able to see the full PowerPoint presentation on YouTube. So a quick update for the cards that we talk about the software stack, right? So which the FXC A8800, okay, it's a mouthful. It's a high performance compute card. So imagine a NUC device being designed in a card form and then can be slotted into the RF02. So we can put a maximum of 4 units of the A8800 unit into the RF02. So what do I mean by that is there will be a 4 full-fledged computer running in the RF02 chassis. And of course, you can add additional cards as well. So at the moment, you can choose operating system between Windows and Linux as well. And you can basically run typical x86 or 64 application on top of the compute card over here. We are using AMD. We partner really closely with AMD to come out with this chip. And of course, ultimately, the integration of the compute card with the RF02. So you'll see a overview of what's happening with the compute card in our dashboard. At the end of the demonstration area, my colleague, Kathy, will be able to showcase the simple integration that we have done via this particular webinar. I don't have the compute card next to me because usually, from HQ, they will have all the cool stuff or all the new stuff, right? For me, I will have the stable stuff. So I don't have the compute card with me. I can't show it to you during my demonstration. So I will pass that to Kathy later on, okay? And of course, new cards released during IDC. We have the FD360. So this is a multifunction decoding card. Picture a D350, all right? A better D350 being converted into a RF02 Cradle cards, okay? So as you can see, this is how the cards I/O like. You get the SDI out, you get the HDMI out. Now you notice there's a USB here. So this is for a future sort of upgrade. It can be a breakout cable for audio. All right, so the R&D side is to look into this input, right? So as of what we have here, it will be a SDI out and HDMI out. So those who doesn't know a D350, basically D means a decoder. So this card is being designed to handle decoding. So what is decoding card? The most important functionality is to grab IP feed, decode it back to HDMI and SDI. And on top of that, this D360 would have the functionality of creating overlay, flexible layouts. For example, picture-in-picture, 2-in-1, 4-in-1, all those layouts can be designed using the FD360, right? So this is sort of like a multi-view card, if you will. However, please do take note. Do check out the specification in terms of how many outputs, as well as how many IP outputs can be rendered, right? Because NDI and NDI-HX basically requires different CPU. So let's say if you're dealing with SRT 264, 265, yeah, you can actually have more outputs, right? As opposed if you're dealing with full NDI, typically full NDI 14K, that consumes most of the CPU of the decoder card. So do check out from our specification page. So moving on, we have another card that being announced, which is the FN7 and FN8 during IBC, right? These are two new cards here. So basically, they are a HD version of the encoder decoder cards. And it will also include the IP conversion functionality in there as well. So you can plug in this card and you can take in SDI for the FN7 and convert it to NDI or other IP protocols that you mentioned over here. Okay. Again, it's only HD. The FN7, FN8 is HD, as opposed the FN50 and the FN60, those are 4K. Okay. Now you'll be asking, right? So what is the difference here, right? You have the FN50, you have the FN7, and then you have the media gateway card, right? So the FN7 and FN8 also does IP conversion. Why do we still need a FMG400? So FMG400 is really convenient if you are taking an IP standard and then rewrap it and make it to another IP. That's it. Okay. Now the FN7, the FN50, all these FN, the N series cards, they basically take baseband, HDMI, and convert it into an IP feed. Now, of course, one of the important questions here is, if I take an FN50 or an FN7, I've converted that to IP signal, can this signal be routed to FMG400? Yes, you can. So essentially, you can take an FN8 or 7, convert it into an NDI-HX, and take this NDI-HX low latency stream, go into an FMG400, pardon me, and create 10 stream of SRT out from the FMG400. So that is the beauty of the FMG400 sitting in the RF02. So now that is some of the quick overview of what we have with the RF02. And of course, there are new cards coming out, announcing hopefully next year. I believe the R&D team is working very closely with some of the standard as well. So just so you know, those cards that we mentioned earlier is just the foundation, right? So there will be more cards coming out soon. Okay, so let's talk about use cases, right? As you know, Kiloview, we've been building a lot of encoders, decoders, and generally we use NDI, NDI-HX, SRT, a lot of those commonly used IP standard. Now, all this IP standard, right, I personally think not only it can only apply in broadcast, right? Anything that requires a video audio transmission, you can basically rely on Kiloview, encoders, decoders per se, or the RF02. So let's talk about customers type, or which business vertical you're in, right? In terms of broadcast, of course, your OBN, your studio, this is really good. You get space saving. Now, if you move into more AV space, enterprise conferences, training, right? Government, let's say in a meeting, in a parliament, right? All this that requires video, audio, recording, routing. Yeah, this will be a good opportunity here because it uses IP networks, right? Of course, not to mention broadcast sports. Yes, House of Worship. These are pretty common, and we can basically rely on the RF02 or other IP encoders and decoders. Now, something to look into it is even for film productions, right? From DITs, for colorists, for directors who needs a preview, you'll be surprised some of the film productions, they also look into NDI, okay? So there are wireless transmitter, RF transmitter that has sending and receiving, and it decodes back to NDI-HX and bring that feed into Kiloview, and then we'll actually decode it into some of the decoders. So it's brilliant, the workflow, it's really cost effective. And I believe those who are doing film production, the products I'm talking about, you might ring some bell. But again, this is the beginning, I believe, because NDI is really, really, it's free, it's easy to use, and indie filmmakers, they are looking at everything at cost cutting. They want to look about distribution. They want to do remote production, remote filming, remote monitoring. You'll be surprised that we can actually achieve it using, encoders, decoders from NDI, and of course from SRT. So in short, anything, if you talk about RF02, I want you to have a quick understanding here is, in RF02, not only it does SDI, HDMI, encoder, decoder, it does IP conversion, right? Imagine you have media ingest, playback devices being embedded into the hardware. Imagine you can do embedding, de-embedding audio, digital audio, video as well. You can have control center automation. You can install fully automated software into the, for example, the A8800 to power software and drive the hardware as well. You can have multi-view hardware cards being deployed into the RF02. And you'll be surprised that you can even run production switcher in the A8800 as well. So production switcher meaning production software switcher. Okay. Yes, this is what we're looking at in the RF02. All right. Now, the interesting part, which is the workflow. So again, when the RF02 was being designed, one of the important tasks is to handle bonding. So as you can see, we do have our P3 and P3 MIDI connected to, this will be a public network. It connects to SIM, and then it goes into your router. So now, most importantly is, if you're hosting it as a bonding decoder hardware, your RF02 needs to front the public IP address. So you need to do some port forwarding. All right, we'll skip that during the deployment, but of course, you can host it on-prem. So it means if you have your own infrastructure, if you have your public IP address, you can host this on-prem, right? You don't necessarily need to set up your bonding server on the cloud, right? These are actually a very good point, right? Using RF02 as a turnkey. So, of course, once you receive the bonding signal, you can decode it into IP, right? If you put in the FMG, you can decode it into SRT, RTMP, RTSP, and of course, you can also decode it to a other IP workflow. For example, in there, some of the IP AV encoders are using RTMP, right? Because they are already in IP, the FMG can convert those signals digitally, and on the AV workflow, you'll be able to use it. Now, interesting part is, because let's say if you have an FMG card, and let's say FMG is able to output an NDI HX, you can then travel within the same local network and then decode it using our decoder, and this will convert back to HDMI or SDI workflow. Now, of course, you'll be saying, hey, JM, can I not use the D360? Can I do a FN50 or FN60? Yes, you can. You can put in a FN50 or FN60 card right in here. Okay, connect here. And then this will automatically go to the SDI flow. Okay. The reason why I'm illustrating this is because we have an IP workflow here. So as long as you have the IP stream, that can be traveled to different networks, right? And then using a portable decoder such as the D350, then you can convert it back to a SDI or HDMI. Okay, I think this is pretty much what you can see on our website. So something cool that I like to share is, if you remember, the RF02 has an internal switch. This switch has 3 SFP plus connector and 1 copper. So now if you look at this design over here, right? So if you dive in deeply, you can basically connect the, let me just zoom in again. So you can see there are 3 SFP plus ports. And let's say, for example, I can connect my chip R1 via the SFP plus directly into the RF02. That gives me a full bandwidth to do recording directly into chip R1, right? Full NDI channel recording or HX, or you want to do transcoding. At the same time, you can also make use of another port of the SFP plus, connect to an X1. Now, X1, it's our Kiloview, sort of like a NDI matrix router. So the beauty of this X1, it basically takes the NDI signal from the network that you can see here, which is purple. So the purple network, oops, sorry. So the purple networks here, maybe this will be a subnet. Pardon me. So the purple networks here basically this can be a VLAN 1, for example, all right? And using the Cube X1 or the core, you can take the NDI feed from Purple network, let's say a VLAN 1, and move it to a completely different network, right? It doesn't need to have VLAN as well. It can be a different subnet or different network. And here you go, I'm able to move the NDI signal to another network through the X1 as well. So the advantage for the X1, right, not only it copies the NDI information, like the video and audio stream from the Purple network, the X1 copies the NDI signal in a super low latency, right? It generates another new NDI source at the different network. So this allows me to cross NDI on the different network segment using the Kiloview Cube X1. Okay, so there's another workflow. Basically, let's say if you are combining the SFP port here to connect to other of the hardware, right? Of course, you can connect to your SAN storage or your NAS storage if you want to do recording, because it is a switch SFP port. And not to mention, all your signal feed can be traveled into a different subnet, and that can move on into a different workflow over here. Okay, moving on. Hybrid production workflow. I think you hear this really commonly used by most of the video production, hybrid, merging between SDI and NDI workflow. All right. Now, the advantage here is, let's say if you're talking about a software switcher such as the TriCaster, okay, because TriCaster, typically you have a 10 gig port. Your 10 gig port SFP can be connected directly into this port, okay, because it's a network port, for example. Okay, again, TriCaster is just an example. If you have any other switch or software switcher, you can connect directly to it. That gives you an unparalleled data throughput, right, using NDI that goes into the RF02. And of course, at the same time, you can still grab the SDI in, convert it to NDI. And of course, there's a loop out. You can also work with the existing SDI workflow as well. Okay. And again, the SFP allows you to connect to, let's say you want to do a recorder. Okay. So this is a hybrid workflow approach. I'm not going to explain this deep down, but this is just another approach. The RF02 is a hybrid turnkey hardware that gives customer to move into a hybrid production that has NDI and, using the existing SDI cameras and workflow. Now, this is another important part here, which is focus on the FMG 400. The RF02 simply, you can use this chassis to use it as an IP in and out conversion, right? Take all the IP standard here, audio, take the bit rate, push it into one of the FMG card and output it into a different bit rate, different resolution, okay? So this is a very powerful tool. Again, I want to differentiate this between these and some of the software solution out there in the market. Bear in mind, this is not a OTT platform all-in-one hardware, right? So we handle, let's say, IP per channel. If you want to decode it to 20 channels, anything which is countable in terms of channel, please make use of FMG 400. Let's say if you are dealing with subscriber, I have 400 subscriber, I have 1,000 subscriber, those are totally different. And of course, you need to refer to some of the companies out there in the market which are really good doing all this OTT transcoding on that. But let's say if you talk about, hey, I want to have a permanent channel transcoding, right? I want to have 10 channels of SRT out this sort of bit rate, permanently. All right, I don't want to pay monthly or yearly subscription. Here you go. The FMG will be a good choice, and each FMG can handle a certain number of channels. So how many FMG card I need? Here you go, 10 channels. All right, and of course, ultimately, I'm still very excited and waiting for this compute card, because this compute card is a game changer, right? Imagine codecs or any other standard that we can't embed or de-embed. You can push it in and do embed and de-embed, route it internally, and then send it out again. Okay. Of course, we have tested with Llama. AV Sono is actually some of the partners that we work with. We basically install that into our compute card. We can grab the signal, embed it, and de-embed it, and send it out again. Okay. Now, this is the last two use cases before I go into a quick overview of the interface. So this is the part where I mentioned earlier that requires some of our professional service to jump into here to configure it. Now imagine, right, I have 3 units of RF02, okay? The common way of using RF02 is you might have a core switch or a central network switch, like the I call it a core switch because it's the important switch where it connects to all the RF02, right? It doesn't need to be a core switch. It can be a decent layer 2 switch or any other network switch, right? But what you need is basically you need something in the middle to join all of them together, right? So that you can do the IP workflow from AV production and then moving the signal from one point to another. Okay, this is conventional. Now, what happens if I want to do IP distribution and I want to expand, all right, but I do not want to rely on a core switch? So what you'll be seeing here is we'll be able to make use of the SFP port. So let me just zoom it in again. So if you can see here, right, there's SFP port here. Imagine each SFP port can be daisy chain and create a star topology within the RF02 environment. So if you can see it, this is not a beautiful star, unfortunately. It looks like a squeezed triangle. But what essentially we are doing here is we are connecting this. Sorry about that. Let me just change this again. We can connect this to here. And let me just take a different color. In this case, I'm going to take green. Connect this to here. And then let me choose the other color. And this device to here. So effectively, I have 3 SFP link. And they created a whole chain here. And which create a redundancy. So in any point of time, all right, you get a problem or you get an issue with this network, okay? Your signal from site A will still be able to flow to site B and then back to main site, right? Same goes to this network. If this goes down, you still have these 2 chains, okay? The point is the RF02 can be used as like a backbone to transmit video, audio signal or any other signal because it's network, right? Let's, for example, take it as a golf course. Golf course is super huge, right? And typically you can't pull copper cable and fiber cables. You know, some of the 4 cores, 3 cores, 9 cores fiber cables are being laid in a golf course. Now, this will be a good hardware to have, okay? Imagine I have 3 areas, 3 production stations. I want to send signal to 3 different locations. And at the moment, you can't configure this off the shelf. It requires professional service from Kiloview team. Speak to us. If you have any requirement, our technical team will be able to assist you. Will there be any charges? At the moment, there's no charges. We just need to know the requirement and see how feasible for us to configure it, all right? So this is something that I like to share because this has been used from China. One of the production site from our domestic team from China deployed this sort of like a redundancy approach, and the customers is one of the, if I could remember correctly, is a local TV station. So they are using this approach to have a redundancy and sending video, audio, or any other signal or IP transmission from one point to another. Okay. So yeah, any question? Please drop down to the comment. So I will quickly show the interface of the RF02. And of course, if you have any question you would like to ask, please drop it there. Our team will do the best to answer it. Okay, so this is the last section of this whole webinar. Let me just quickly pull out my interface. So for those who have not seen the RF02, this is on the latest firmware. And once you logged in, okay, so let me log out from the scratch. So once you logged in, here you go. That will give you a really nice overview. It tells you number of cards which are connected, right? I have only 3 cards, the FMG and the FM50 and 60. And you can also see the decoding mode and the gateway card. So again, as an IT administrator, as a production team, I can come in here. This gives me sort of like a confidence monitor to tell me what's happening with my chassis, right? The encoder mode and whatnot. And then the bandwidth, the CPU utilization, the temperature, everything here as well. And underneath, you'll be able to see how many channels I'm decoding, how many channels I have and encoders. And yeah, you'll see bonding as well. Why? Because this hardware can also connect to bonding device, like I said earlier, right? I have P3 Mini here, and this P3 Mini can send a signal directly into the RF02 per se. Okay, so again, we have the gateway FMG. So let me dwell into the FMG card here. So the FMG basically has an in and out. So I can take any inputs. So now I'm at the FMG section. I'll take an input. Let's say my input signal is going to be an NDI. I'll choose NDI, VLC, click apply, pick that input, okay? And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take the same input, I'm gonna take the input and convert it to SRT2, okay? And the protocol will be SRT, and then I'm just gonna select my NDI VLC2. So for this purpose, this demonstration, I'm gonna quickly fill this some data here. Maybe I'll use port 30, hit apply. And here you go. I will basically take the NDI feed from source, okay, from here. And I'm going to convert it into SRT2. So let me turn this on. So now it's streaming, okay. So source is connected, okay. Now, the other cool stuff we have with the FMG is we can create a simple panel. So let me just add all this output, and I'll add all the input as well. Okay. And I can go to this cross point. I can take any signal coming in, NDI, whether is it from the FN50, FN60, I can then select on which channel I would want to push it out, all right? So this is sort of like a simple matrix trigger here. So I can choose what feed to send to, okay? So maybe the conversion settings is not being input correctly, but you can create this panel here, and each FMG card will be able to have this panel designed based on number of channels that you want. Okay, so that's the FN G400. Very quickly, if you jump into the FN60, so you can see the similarity of this. If you play with our FN60, our N60 before, this is a decoding mode, and then yeah, so you can choose what channel to decode. Okay, so of course, user management, firmware, logs. Okay, so yeah, let me see what else we have. Okay, very quickly, I think I still have 10 more minutes. I will get Kathy to show you the x86, the compute card platform. Kathy, you still there? Can you quickly show our audience on the interface for the compute card?
Yes, Jen, thanks. Hello, everyone. Welcome to join us. I'll show you the UI of the computer card. Please wait for a moment.
So Kathy will be able to show you how the compute card will look like at the interface.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. You can carry on.
Okay, this is the web UI of the RF02. This is the computer card. Like the FN60 and FN50, we can get access to the computer card from the web UI.
So once you click on the compute card section, it immediately pull out the window for you to log in as our RTP session.
It's similar to our computer desktop. We can see.
So this is literally Windows running. This is an RDP session. As you can see, it's doing a video playback. And I think yesterday we did some tests. There's some switching software running at the background. I think that has been turned off. So we were doing some tests on the video switcher running for stability tests. So basically, once you log in, you will be able to see a software switcher, but that software didn't run. Hopefully, after the next session, we will need to boot it up again and to show it to the audience. So here you go. This is how simple it is. So from the RF02, Kathy, could you go back to the second tab, please?
Okay.
Could you go back to the, yeah.
Yes.
So it gives you the information, it tells you a compute card, you can change the device name, it tells you the data throughput, the IP address. So all of this can be configured. But the part which I really like the most is for you to click one button, pull out a browser and log in using RDP, and then you can control your computer, right? It's exactly how you run Windows computer. Or if you are using Linux, I've not shown Linux in this demonstration because it's testing on Windows, but I believe the Linux will be the same approach. Okay, so due to time, I still have some time for some questions. I have 10 more minutes. Yep. Thanks, Kathy. I think that's what we're gonna show. Yeah, and let's move on to my slide here very quickly. Thanks, Kathy.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Thanks, everyone.
Now, of course, we are approaching year of 2025. It's going to be end of October. It's going to be Halloween soon. And then here you go, you get Christmas. But with that, we like to extend our trade-in of our bonding devices. So if any of your customers or yourself are using our old P1 and P2, you want to trade up for a better unit to P3 Mini, we have that still available until end of the year. If you're using any other brands of bonding devices, as long as they're able to power up, we'll take that as well. And most importantly, RF02, we will extend the 10% RF02 promotion until end of the year as well. So in any combination of an RF02 frame with FMG or FN card, you'll get additional 10% discount when you purchase the full bundle kit. Okay, but of course, the price will be vary on each country. In Australia, in Japan, in Malaysia, and in Singapore, please reach out to our distributor for the final pricing, right? But there will be much cheaper if you purchased the RF02 until end of the year promotion. Okay, thanks again. Thank you so much for all your time. I really appreciate your attention. And of course, all the hard work that our team from HQ replying all the questions in our chat. Is there anything else that you guys want to find out? We still have 9 more minutes. I'm so sorry because this is a one session approach. I'll prefer to see everyone's face to have a conversation, but we have quite a lot of participants, about 30 today. So I wanted to squeeze everything within 45 to 1 hour. So it'd be good if you have any questions, you can join into the chat. Would you please send us an email? Yes, we'll send you an email. Okay, we are only 1080p at the moment. The computer card is equivalent to built-in computer. Okay. So I guess Aaron already, or Kathy already helped us to answer most of the question here. Okay, if there is no more question, I would like to, okay, what is the approximate cost of the Kiloview FXC831? So Rob is asking what is the cost. Can anyone from HQ answer this? Because I don't have a specific number. Okay, I heard from Kiloview support that regular reboots about 1 week are recommended for standalone devices such as the N series. Do you recommend regular reboots for RF02 card? Oh, that is a good question, Haruka. So generally, the N series cards like the N50, N60, they are much more powerful. You don't need to reboot it, but it will be good to reboot it as a maintenance. So for example, you can set it maybe once a month. Okay, because it's still a card, you would need to do a reboot card itself. You don't need to reboot the RF02. The RF02 can run 24/7, but each card in the RF02, you can do a maintenance, for example. You can do a quick reboot, and it takes less than a minute to reboot each card, for example. Yeah, I have my RF02 here running for many days with my Kilolink server, but because I'm on a testing environment, so sometimes it will be different from customer side. But of course, if anything, please reach out to our support. But primarily, I would say it depends on the complexity of the workflow. I've not rebooted my card many days, but yeah, in certain situations, you would need to reboot the cards for maintenance purposes. But yes, the RF02, you don't need to reboot the hardware, right? The card in the RF02, there's a maintenance tab. You can choose to schedule for reboot if you want to. Is it similar to Netgear AV series? Oh, Jeffrey, this is straight to the point. So I just wanted to let you guys know the switch in the RF02 is not a network switch design to run it by itself. The RF02 simply join the platform and together with a switch that has a layer 3 capacity. So if you talk about a full-fledged network layer 3 switch, RF02 is not a network switch. Okay, you still need to rely. Let's say if you have a Netgear AV core switch, yes, please use it, right? Connect to it. But let's say if you're setting up an isolation IP transmission where, I want to have, earlier I talked about the daisy chain setup. You want to have 2 devices or 3 devices or 4 devices per se. Yeah, you can actually use our method because that will be an isolated network. But if you're building an existing IP network that has already a core switch being designed in there, right? Yeah, please, we can use that for sure. But I won't say it is a one-to-one hardware replacement. It's just complementing each other. But yeah, this is a very good question. I like it. Netgear AV series in terms of NDI optimization. I have to say confidently is because our R&D spent a lot of time building NDI products. So the RF02 network port, they are super optimized for NDI. This is what I can guarantee you because imagine all the NDI feeds being sent through the port, right? And it's like an important piece of our technology that cannot have problems. So that is what I can assure you. Thanks for the question, Jeffrey. Thanks again, Haruka-san. Ferd, okay, Ferd, AI assistant, very nice. FM5060 support SRT encoding. Yes, FM50, okay, Kathy already replied that. Oh, there's so many questions. So what else? At least you can connect to RF02 to the internet in the end, and then you can use it as a streaming server. Yes, Jeffrey, you're right. You can connect the, here you go, you figure it all out. So yes, you can connect RF02 to the internet if your network has an internet as well. You just need to put a router in front using one of the copper ports. Good, thanks again. All right, we have 4 more minutes extra. I think that's okay. I will leave the extra 4 minutes time back to you guys to enjoy your day. So again, if you have any questions, if you feel shy to ask on the chat, please drop us an email at support@kiloview.com. And of course, my email and Kathy's email is on the screen. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, guys, for joining this session. And I'll see you guys on the next Kiloview training. Thank you again, and I'll see you again. Thanks, guys.